Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening. You're with me, Mazlina Ismail, in this program, Great Works of the Muslim World on IKIM, Inspirasi Inforia Islami. And this week, Alhamdulillah, we are back to share with you on our next Great Works of the Muslim World. And we have our guest, Dr. Muhammad Husni Muhammad Amin, Senior Research Officer, IKIM Center for Science and Environment Studies, on the show this week as my guest. Assalamualaikum, Dr. Husni.
Waalaikumsalam, Mas. How
How
are
are
you?
you?
Good. Alhamdulillah.
Recovering from COVID-19, but Alhamdulillah, doing well. Thank you.
Okay.
This week we are sharing our next story on the great works of the Muslim world, which is Kitab al-Hiyal, Banu Musa's Book of
Yes.
Ingenious Devices. So,
Yes.
we would like to know, before we delve into our topic today, Dr. Husni, would you share with
Yes.
us what are ingenious devices? The meaning of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa alihi washabihi ajma'in. Thank you, Mas. It's good to be back as a guest
Alhamdulillah.
on this show again. The past couple of weeks had been a good experience for me, becoming a host and then interviewing other people who share great works with
Yes.
us. So
Yes.
I'm happy to be back as a guest today. So
Thank you.
back to your question, what
Mm-hmm.
are ingenious devices? I think because ingenious devices, I think it's popularized by Dr. Donald Rutledge Hill and Dr. Ahmad Yusuf al-Hasan,
Mm-hmm.
both of whom were scholars. They have since passed away, I think, in 2010. But Dr. Donald Hill, he used to be a mechanical engineer, a scientist by training, but together with Dr. Yusuf al-Hasan, they worked to uncover these works by Muslim engineers and scientists in the past, and they've come up with this word ingenious devices. I think because it came from the word ingenuity,
Mm-hmm.
which also synonymous with intelligence, because there are also things which are out of the ordinary, a product of the human intellect,
Mm-hmm.
and they are constructed and they operate based on ingenuity. They are marvels, and they are assigned to tasks which a human mind is expected to work. I mean, they perform works which are not dull. They seem to know, these devices seem to follow a certain programming, and I don't mean programming in the IT sense of the word, but
Okay.
they follow a certain path that we set to them. So they
Mm-hmm.
appear to be intelligently designed, and
Mm-hmm.
they perform tasks rather automatically. And this we can equate with the word that the topic used for today, hiyal, which comes from the word hala yahilu, or haul, meaning tricks or ingenuity or stratagems or even devices, referring to the ability to go around an obstacle, to counter certain strategy or
Mm-hmm.
overcome obstructions. So
Mm-hmm.
these allude to the fact that that's how the human mind works. I mean, look at Imam Ghazali, how he defined al-aqal, the intelligence or human intellect, in his Ihya Ulumuddin. He
Mm-hmm.
says that one of the I mean, benefit or advantage of the human being over other creatures, animals, because owing to this intellectual ability to come up with certain designs and ways to overcome difficulties. So back to your question, what are
Mm-hmm.
ingenious devices? Well, today we know them as automatic devices. Back then, what they call as al-alat al-mutaharrikah bidhatiha, the tools or devices that
Mm-hmm.
that move by itself. So today we call
Right.
them as automatic, coming from the Greek word automata, meaning something that they wind up and then by means of flywheel, and then when you release
Mm-hmm.
it, so it expends the energy that you put into it, so it moves to do work that we assign to them. So this is a little bit about ingenious devices.
Right. Okay. Thank you
Yes.
for the
Yeah.
definition. Now, going
Yeah.
back to our topic
You're
this
welcome.
week in the great works of the Muslim
Yeah.
world, speaking our next real life heroes, I would say. Who are the
Yes.
Banu Musa brothers and what is their background story?
Yeah. So they were three brothers, Abu Ja'far Muhammad, al-Qasim Ahmad, and al-Hasan. And the reason why they are named Banu Musa is owing to because of their father's name,
Mm-hmm.
Musa ibn Shakir. So Banu Musa were the sons of Musa,
Musa.
uh, and they were their father, Musa ibn Shakir, was a close companion to Khalifah al-Ma'mun in the 9th century, and
Mm-hmm.
they grew up in the palace under the patronage of Khalifah al-Ma'mun, and
This
growing
is
up,
Abbasid.
sorry, this is the
Abbasid.
Abbasid period in the ninth period. In the
Yeah.
ninth century, between
Yeah.
800, I mean, they were born, according to the historians,
Mm-hmm.
circa 830, and then they
Mm-hmm.
died in 873. That's
Right.
their death dates. So
Okay.
these three brothers, they grew up in the palace, and then they
Mm-hmm.
acquired. That's where they acquired their education, and together they formed a collective expertise ranging from astronomy to mathematics to engineering and geometry. And they were the contemporaries of Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khawarizmi, uh, and according to D.M. Dunlop, it is possible that one of them, the eldest, Abu Ja'far Muhammad, was this Muhammad al-Khawarizmi. But
Mm-hmm.
that's one opinion
Okay.
because of the books that they have written. Uh, who this Musa al-Khawarizmi, who invented algorithm that we use in mathematics that we know today, which led to the invention of the computer. And also they were also contemporary to Al-Kindi, and who studied and introduced Greek philosophy to the Muslim world. That
Mm-hmm.
was the time when the Muslims, they encountered works from foreign lands, from Greece, from
Mm-hmm.
Persia, from India, and they worked to translate these works into Arabic, and they studied these works. So Banu Musa later became deeply involved with politics and public works. They were contracted by the Abbasid Caliph. One of them was Al Mutawakkil, and they got involved with a really huge, projects during that day. One of it is the construction of the Ja'fariyah township near Samarra, and they were also one of the forces involved with the translation movement that Khalifa al-Ma'mun patronized. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
which they were responsible in collecting, studying, and translating, and discoursing works from the Greece world, from the Persian world, and the Indian world. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where they worked. They worked at the renowned center that Khalifa Harun al-Rashid, who was the father of al-Ma'mun, they had built. I mean, the Caliph had built this center of learning called Baitul Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, and they employed other scholars, such as Hunain in Ishaq and Thabit in Qura, to acquire and translate ancient scientific manuscripts. Under the patronage of these caliphs, Banu Musa, they designed and built wondrous things, automatic devices such as fountains, automatic machines, which I mentioned, and even hurricane lamp. And one of the description of these devices, uh, they said that the hurricane lamp, whose flame was shielded by a vane, which always turned that, so it was at the right angles to the wind direction. Meaning, if you are in a situation, if you are in a situation where the wind is blowing and you have
Mm-hmm.
this hurricane lamp, meaning the vane will always move according to the direction of the wind, so your flame wouldn't get blown away.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be extinguished. So we talk about how their works have impacted us in the modern times. So we see that in 16th century, this English culture by the name of Sir John Harrington, he was
Mm-hmm.
writing this book called A New Discourse of a Stale Subject. This was in 1596 in 16th
Mm-hmm.
century. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he was talking about politics, but in a way of describing the politics of England during that time, he
Yeah.
had used he had used this allegory to this device called the flush toilet, which was installed in his home in Kelston, in London. Because had it not been for the invention of the tank-filled valve uh,
Okay.
in the toilet, then this device wouldn't have worked. But we find that in Kitab al-Hiyal, Banu Musa was the first who have described and illustrated the mechanisms, design and operation. Now it's ubiquitous. You go to the bathroom, and then if you open up
Yeah.
one tanks, so you will see that mechanism there, the float system
Mm.
that was involved, that was invented
Invented.
by the Banu Musa. In fact, you can see it in the manuscript. But
Oh.
although it's a simple device, Mas,
Mm.
it is insignificant because it provides a way for us to store water,
Yeah.
essential for residential homes, and
Mm-hmm.
also for work, for construction, for manufacturing, for agricultural
Yeah.
industries. So without this simple
Mm-hmm.
mechanism, urban expansion as we know today wouldn't smell as good.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of background of Banu Musa and how their inventions have impacted us today.
Right. Amazing. You see, when
Yes.
we talk about Banu Musa brothers, you can have
Yeah.
one genius, in a town and a city, but you have three sons, three genius
Yes.
sons,
Yes.
not
Yes.
only translating languages, like you said, three languages into Arabic. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
Uh-huh. But
You're
also
right.
also inventing, this ingenious devices, like you said. So inshallah, I'm sure there's a lot more we can learn about their background, but that's
Yes.
all that we can share now. So
Yes.
going into their Kitab al-Hiyal, besides Kitab al-Hiyal or the Book of Ingenious Devices, is there any other works did they produce? You
Yeah.
see?
According to historians, according to Donald Hill, uh,
Mm.
I've counted there other than Kitab al-Hiyal, they're quite prolific. Mas, we can find like 20 other works that they
Mm.
have written, which the Egyptian historian or
Mm.
biographer by the name of al-Qifti in
Mhm.
14th century, he listed about 20 other works by Banu Musa. But unfortunately for us, these works do no longer exist in their
Mm.
extent, in their manuscript form, except for Kitab al-Hiyal. Maybe they are stored somewhere, maybe we don't know. maybe
Mm.
in a museum, uh, maybe it's buried in a crypt or somewhere yet to be discovered. But we do have the names of the works that they have produced, provided to us by Al-Qifti. But some of these works we know as Kitab al-Hiyal, which is a treatise on weight balance, on pneumatic devices, devices that work by air pressure. This one was written by one of the brothers called Ahmad. A book on description of instrument. I'm not going to list all 20 works here, but suffice that I mentioned some of significant few.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
also there's a book on first motion of celestial sphere. This work is on astronomy, on Ptolemaic. It's a critic on the Ptolemaic system. If you recall that Ptolemy had advocated for a geocentric universe, meaning the Earth is the center of the universe, and all suns, planets, stars are orbiting around the Earth. So they presented a book on this because they were themselves part of the Munajimun, meaning the astronomers that work in the palace. And there were also lots of books on mathematics, on calculus, which Gerard of Cremona later translated into Latin, into French, and
Mm-hmm.
later it became a standard text in Europe in 16th century, which they studied.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a book on the construction of the astrolabe, the simple device that they can
Mm-hmm.
use. Uh, Muslims, professionals called muwakkil used to use this device to determine, the position, with relative positions. If you can find out where is your position, you can find out the latitude and the longitude. You can determine the position of the stars, of the sun. Then you can determine, prayer times. Like
Mm-hmm.
now we have, Ahli Falak to do that for us. And
Mm-hmm.
they also have a book on Zich, which later Ibn Yunus, the famous astronomer, mentioned. Book on measurement of plane and spherical figures, which later was edited by Nasruddin Tusi in the 13th century. This book was translated by Gerard Cremona, and it appeared under the title Libertrium Fratum de Geometria and Verba Filium Moisi Fili Secer. Don't ask me because I don't know what it
Latin.
means in Latin. but
Right.
suffice to say that this treatise on geometry was extensively used during the European Middle Ages,
Mm.
and I think later, quoted by Ibn Haytham, by Leonardo Fibonacci, who's
Mm-hmm.
famous for the Fibonacci sequence, Giordano de Nemore, and also Roger Bacon. So some of the theorems found in this book are not found in the work of their predecessors, namely the Greek mathematicians. And also other books. Uh, there were many, on geometry, because it's one of their profession, geometer. I mean, it used to be called as muhandisun, because that's the discipline handasa. Today, they are known as engineers. So
Mm-hmm.
that's roughly, the overview of the list of works that I can give now, Mas.
Right. Thank you. But for sure that Kitab al-Hiyal is
Yes.
accessible to readers today.
Yes, yes. In fact, in 1979, Dodrich has published an edition of this, a critical edition, which was done by Donald Hill and Ahmad Yusuf Hassan. They produced a critical Arabic edition from the manuscript that they have gathered.
Mm-hmm.
These manuscripts they sourced mainly from the Topkapi Palace Museum
Mm-hmm.
in
Turkey.
Istanbul, in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And so they produced an Arabic critical edition, and also they have translated it into English. But
Mm.
because it is accessible, accessible to scholars, to specialists,
Mm-hmm.
um, but because it was published a long time ago, 1979, it's not readily, I mean, you cannot, it is very difficult for us to go out there and go to a
Mm.
bookstore and find them, but maybe it's out of print. But we do have, a copy of it
Mm-hmm.
here in IKIM library. So those who are interested they can come and visit and have a look at the book. Is quite a thick
Thick. Uh-huh.
book. Yes,
Fantastic.
that's about
I should have
yes,
I should have a look at it.
yes, sure.
Right. So, could you tell us about the book itself? What else
So
can we discover in the book?
yeah, yeah, sure. So Kitab al-Hiyal is a largely illustrated work on mechanical device, as I said before, including
Mm-hmm.
automata. Automata is the Greek word for automatic devices. That's where we get the word automatic. So
Yes.
the book was commissioned by the Abbasid Caliph of Baghdad, and
Mm-hmm.
also the Khalifah al-Ma'mun, who instructed Banu Musa to acquire all those Hellenistic texts that had been preserved in monasteries and
Mm-hmm.
scholars. This happened during the decline and the fall of the Roman civilization. So some of these devices described in the Book of Ingenious Devices were inspired by the works of the Greek mechanicals, the Greek engineers. One of them was named Hero of Alexandria and Philo of Byzantium. So it covers devices made by Greek and also Roman
Mm-hmm.
engineers. But many of the devices that they describe in the book were actually original inventions by the Banu Musa brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They took Greek works as a starting point, but they
Mm-hmm.
went beyond anything that was achieved by Hero or Philo. For example, there's one device that worked by invented by the Greek engineers. They try to demonstrate how the Greeks pray to their gods. So you have like a device that has figurines on top of it, and then the
Mm-hmm.
figurines, you give them energy by
Mm-hmm.
turning their flywheel. So that's how
Mm-hmm.
you input the energy into them, and when like a flywheel, you have a turning key, and
Mm-hmm.
then you release it. So while it expands the energy that is stored in the flywheel, so the figure will move around and sort of make gestures as if they are praying to the Greek
Mm-hmm.
gods. So the Banu Musa, obviously they are Muslim. They were not going to make such a device. But in one of the drawings and in an illustration that they provide us in the book of Kitab al-Hiyal, we find that they have a device that have the figurines of lions and gazelle, and then in one instant they describe that when uh, and then the lion is about to dip its head in a bowl containing water. So it described that whenever the lion uh, dips its head to drink
Mm-hmm.
water
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
the bowl, and these are all mechanical figures.
Exactly. Yes.
Uh, so they show that. So when the lion dips its head in the bowl to drink water, the gazelle will feel safe, and so they will
Uh-huh.
also dip their head in the bowl to drink water. And once
Right.
the lion, growls and as if to make the sound as if having satisfied itself drinking water, then it will move its head, and the gazelle will move their heads also. So as if to teach people how these animals are
Mm-hmm.
behave outside there in the wild. So
Right.
and then there were also the thing that I mentioned to you before. There was a tank, and then there was a flute. So this described that whenever there's water will fill up the basin outside of the tank, and whenever people take water out of the basin, so
Mm-hmm.
the level of water will will go down, will be reduced. So that's
Mm-hmm.
when the float will allow will open the valve, and water will come in and fill up the basin, so it's
Mm-hmm.
perpetually
Yeah.
full of water. So
Yeah.
that is one description that we can find in Kitab al-Hiyal, which you cannot find it in the previous works by the Greeks or by the Romans. So
Mm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
one novelty, the use of automatic controls that they see. So other works combine pneumatics and aerostatics, is using pressure, water pressure, and also air pressure. So these works parallel to control engineering and pneumatic instrumentation that we use today, what we call as hydraulics, we use
Mm.
in tractor, in heavy
Yeah.
machineries. So they have other automatic controls and trick vessels. They show they show various vessels, water containers. So they describe that whenever you put in water inside there and you try to pour it, so it comes out from other outlets that you never think about. So it is a wonder. It makes people marvel at that. And then they have also, like I said, valves. They created the conical
Mm.
valves, that is inline component in flow systems. So this is the first time that conical valves are introduced in engineering practices. They have also plug valve, float valve, and tap. The tap water that we use today, the head of the tap, and then automatic fountains. They describe the construction of various automatic fountains, and then they also have fountain heads in the shape of a shield. I mean, it spurts out water in the shape of a shield, meaning it's round like we see in water fountains today, and also water fountains that discharge water in a shape of a lance or a single jet. It spurts upward, and then it forms like a how they describe it as a lily of the valley, like a plant. And they also have mechanical musical instruments. Uh,
Mm.
one of it was a hydro powered organ, which played interchangeably played by interchangeable cylinders automatically. So according to one of the researchers, Charles Fowler, this cylinder with raised pins on the surface remain the basic device to produce and reproduce music mechanically until the second half of the 19th century.
Do
And
you have a name of
also,
this instrument? Do you know if there is a name for
um,
this?
I think that's what it is, organ. Now we call it organ, organ,
Uh-huh.
like a piano. But
Right.
nowadays we
Okay.
use electronic. But it used to be that they call it an organ or a piano. So
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
yeah, so there were also devices to remove foul air from wells, and they explained that these instruments allow workers to descend into any well for a while. I mean, this is the I mean, before the invention of oxygen tanks. So
Mm-hmm.
miners could go down underground, and
Mm-hmm.
they carry with them this equipment invented by Banu Musa, and they could go deep and still get fresh air from outside. So this
Wow.
is their work, and a whole of other devices that I can briefly mention before we run out of time.
Yeah.
Mechanical trick devices, the hurricane lamp that
Mm-hmm.
I have described in the beginning of our
Yeah.
program, and self-feeding lamp, meaning there's a lamp and then you put oil into it, and it works like a timer. So when it runs out of thread or wick, so it automatically shuts itself, or it automatically extinguishes the fire. So you don't need to worry during that time. You need to worry before you go to sleep. You have to blow out your candles. Otherwise,
Mm.
animals, small animals, rodents, rats, they might they
Yeah.
might hit one of those and cause fire to break out in the house. So pretty much that is what I can share about Kitab
Kitab
al-Hiyal
al-Hiyal.
today.
Mm-hmm,
Yes.
mm-hmm. Not only they translated, all
Yeah.
these devices
Mm-hmm.
actually translated from other inventors, but they also
Yeah.
invent their own
Yes,
devices.
they were pretty much
Right.
inventors themselves.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, marvelous. So,
Yeah.
mashallah, I think, would you like to do a conclusion from our heroes, Banu Musa and Kitab al-Hiyal this week? Yeah.
Yes, in fact, I would. So in conclusion, we can say that Banu Musa, they suggested various applications for the system they contrive, including drinking, washing, and even ablution.
Yeah.
And there is no doubt that Islam's exhortation to strive for cleanliness and provide others
Mm-hmm.
with amenities, as well
Mm-hmm.
as its technological imperatives, inspired the Banu Musa creativity and innovation. So there's no reason to say that religion can hinder creativity and innovation in science and technology. In fact, that's poor excuse, but
Yeah.
rather what with the correct worldview, how we understood the world as God has created, that
Mm-hmm.
this should propel us to become more creative and innovative. In fact, there's a hadith of the Prophet, "Takhallaqu bi akhlaqillah," I mean, adorn yourself with the
Mm.
attributes of God. So God is creative. He creates all that. So we should move in that direction to be creative and innovative. But in order to benefit others as a Muslim should. So that's my conclusion for today, Mas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Husni. Indeed, very
You're welcome.
interesting, especially when the history of certain inventions. You would not look at it in the same way anymore. You would recall like how genius these people came up with all these ideas and works. And thank you very much for sharing with us on
You're welcome,
this week's
Mas.
topic. Alhamdulillah, Kitab al-Hiyal, Banu Musa's Book of Ingenious Devices, and inshallah we'll be sharing on our next topic. Would you like to give a hint on what's next?
I'm still thinking about that. Let's keep it under wraps right now.
Keep it as a surprise, and inshallah perhaps we
Yes.
will also have our next guest, who knows, right? So
Yeah.
until then, thank you very much once again, Dr. Husni Muhammad Amin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Welcome.
wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi